script. So, Grace, if you'll record, I'm ready to start.
Okay, we are now recording.
Thank you. This is Esther McCullough of the Fairfax County History Commission Ethnic and Oral History Committee. The meeting is being held electronically on September the 21st. Had to find it on the computer. 21st, 2021. Audibility of members' voices. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically, the Ethnic and Oral History Committee needs to make certain findings for the record to evidence our compliance with all applicable laws. These motions address this compliance. First, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each committee member participating in this meeting to state your name and your location. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. And proceeding with the roll call, Ann Stutz and Barnes.
Here. Ann Barnes is here.
Location?
I am located in Gunston, Virginia.
Okay. Cheryl Ann Ripetti.
Cheryl Ripetti in Sully District in Centerville.
Wonderful. Phyllis Walker Ford.
Phyllis Walker Ford, Lee District, located in Clifton, Virginia.
Subi Mendy.
Subi Mehdi McLean in Dranesville District.
Thank you. Lynn Garvey Hodge. Tammy Manarino.
Hi, Tammy Manarino here.
Where are you, Tammy?
We missed you.
Okay. Barbara
Tammy.
Peters. Sally Lyons. Okay, so we have 2 or 3 people missing, but we will continue. And I'm Esther McCullough of Sully District. At this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to my designated Vice President, Cheryl Ripetti.
All right, I got that. Madam Chair.
So that I may make appropriate motions. I move that the Ethnic and Oral History Committee certify for the record that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the board.
Any discussions? A second, please?
I'll second.
Subi second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Need for an electronic meeting. Second, I move that the Ethnic and Oral History Committee certify that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this committee and the public to physically attend this meeting in person, and the usual procedures cannot be implemented safely or practically. As a result, I further move that the Ethnic and Oral Committee conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by calling 844-621-3956 and entering access code 2345-234-7648.
I second the motion.
Tammy seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you. Need to dispense with FOIA's usual procedures to assure continuity in government continual operations. Finally, I move that the Ethnic and Oral History Committee certify that the matters on its agenda today relate to the COVID-19 emergency itself or necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government and or statutorily required to or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the Ethnic and Oral History Committee lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities.
I
Anyone
second the
second?
motion.
Tammy seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you. And would you like your
Thank-
gavel back?
Thank you.
Here we go.
Very good. Okay. I appreciate each of you for attending. This meeting will not be long at all because I've had a number of incidents this week and I stayed at home, but they happened anyway. I had a foot injury in that I dropped a laptop on that big toe. Not good. But I did go to the doctor today, and so far nothing's broken. We'll have to see in 2 weeks whether anything is fractured. But I have medication and I'm on the mend. So I don't know how soon the medication will kick in. So this meeting will be very brief. Last time we talked about a number of things, doing a work plan that outlines the activities. We talked about what we should do to plan to stay focused and on task. And I think that's a very good goal. I'd like to put that on for next time. As you can see, I'm a little unorganized because I didn't even send you an agenda. And the one thing I tried to send you, the computer messed up and sat by itself before I attached the document. So please excuse the computer and me, but I have sent that to you now.
Yes.
Let's talk about the citizen participation, ways to train the public to conduct interviews in their districts. We talked about working on a kit, and Subi is willing to lead that effort with our input. So I tried to send you questions that could possibly be used for the interviews. First of all, if we start with the questions, then do a script and then determine who's doing the interview, whether it's an adult or a youth or a commissioner, and then continue to form the kit because it'll have to be tweaked a little bit for the youth. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So did any of you get to look at the questions?
Very briefly.
Okay. There are quite a few things there. I conducted an interview. I actually did one in 2009. That's how long this effort's been trying to go on. I won't go into the stumbling points of why it hasn't been done yet, but I conducted one interview of one of my church members who was, I can't remember now, 105 or something like that. I got her permission, but it was before the lawyer, our lawyer for the county had given us the form. So if we want to use that, which I suggest, we try to get permission from her relatives and get it into whatever we're doing. But the questions are meant for citizens, not the supervisors, not any of the county employees. They're meant for everyday citizens. That's why it starts off the way it does. Now, when you look at those, it looks like a lot of questions. Now, the 100-plus-year-old woman went through every one.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
she was very alert, very intact. But I do realize that everybody will not be able to last that long. So some of the questions might need to be shortened. Some of them might need to be eliminated, but it's meant to bring out the person's dealings as they grew up in Fairfax County and knowing what they were about.
Mhm.
So any comments or
So,
questions?
yeah, so Esther, just a quick question. The one that you did in 2009, how long did it take you to complete that? Was it an hour?
Now, that's been some time ago. It was probably an hour because she was someone that I was quite familiar with,
Mhm.
and I let her ramble on.
Yeah.
So it was not as structured as we're talking about, especially with Channel 16.
Right. So how did you record the interview?
I had just an old-fashioned tape recorder,
Okay.
and then I transcribed.
Right. Because I can totally see, I mean, these are great questions. But I could see somebody, an interviewee looking at it and wanting to start in, on item 7 or something,
Yes.
just that
Yes.
being their, entree, like what will get them talking and what they're most interested in talking about. So I could see them wanting to tailor the order that they might tackle them. But these are great.
Right.
So I think
But
when we
that's-
do a kit, when we do a training, then
Mhm.
we can break up the questions into introductory, contextual, or whatever experience.
That's a good idea.
Then we can train the interviewer to start off by saying that first, at the beginning, let's just do away with some key information about you.
Mhm.
Your name, and then
Right.
let's go into your experience. So I think it's a matter of how we design the toolkit and how we do the training of trainers. So I think,
Mhm.
and there will always be someone who will just jump to the experience, and then it's the savviness of the interviewer to keep the person on focus. I think we should let them talk, but always bring them back to the appropriate
Right.
question. It's a couple of things I was thinking. So I agree with Tammy. I think these are great questions. So what went through my mind very briefly was, why are we doing it? So in terms of, so I went online and I checked, what is history? So there are some kind of two broad categories of how we document history. And one is exactly this, like stories, individual stories. and the other one is, looking at an event in a chronological order. So if we are going to look at stories, then in terms of documenting the story, other than the tape and the transcription, should we have a summary at the beginning or end, like highlights from the interview? And should we have any interpretation? I mean, or is it just a very basic documentation of what the person said?
So there's a difference between the data gathering process and the interpretation of data. And I think doing an oral history is focused on gathering that data, and you just want the subject to speak for themselves. And you might you may have an interpretive framework, that your oral that the data is going to fit into later on. So, and that would go to tailoring what your questions are. So but you don't necessarily want to. You don't want to start the interpretation process before you've gathered your data, because your data has to speak to you.
Right. So
Right.
I think I'm in the toolkit mode.
Right.
So if I'm designing a toolkit, there is the interview, there is the training of the interviewer, and then what do we do with the data?
Mm-hmm. And so if that's sort of, because one of the things that you want to do, if you were going to do this as a project overall, you need to gather these stories from multiple people. So it's, in terms of training somebody to go out and, they're just going to go out and collect the data. I mean, I think it might be appropriate for the kit to include a reflections section where the interviewer, makes comments about the experience. Maybe, maybe we do have some sort of thematic questions to get them thinking, and they can reflect on those, so that there is a certain degree of interpretation, but you don't want to oversteer, a little bit, because ideally you have, with a set of oral histories, you have something that multiple interpreters, multiple historians can come back to over many years and ask different questions of, and learn different things from it, put it into different kinds of analytical contexts. And so you don't want to, oversteer and over control your data, unless you have something very specific in mind, but I don't know that we do. I also, but in terms of kits, and designing the kit and organizing these questions, I was looking at some suggestions for oral histories. In particular, there are a couple of suggested, sets of questions for interviewing immigrants, which might be something to look at. And one of the suggestions that I noted was that they said, one way of kind of organizing your questions and keeping the interview from getting too out of control, and to keep it focused, is to actually go through the chronology of the person's life, and to use that as a sort of structuring element, an organizing element.
Right. And that's one thing I was trying to convey with the list of questions in the categories, and that you start off identifying the person, but letting them say what their legacy is there. Who were their brothers and sisters and parents and all that, and then go through things that would pertain to the childhood, and then move to occupation and those kinds of things.
Right. And there might be some pre-interview work that needs to be done, communication between the interviewer and the interviewee, where you kind of establish, what period of time is going to be most interesting to both for that person to talk about, maybe World War I or, World War II, I guess it would be more appropriate, but with our living population, but just kind of establish, like, did this person have a role that they're going to want to talk about, and it's kind of tailor for their comfort level and for everyone's interest level, what the boundaries are, and prepare that ahead of time before the interview takes place, kind of a back and forth.
Okay. Is anybody taking notes?
I'm taking some notes.
Okay. I'm trying to too.
Well, and I'm
So
thinking
the
of how
The
sorry.
kit could contain the information we got from the citizen, the interview itself, the data, and then a reflection section afterwards. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I thought the kit was to do the interview, was to prepare for doing the interview. Is the kit the result of the interview?
No, but if we're training and we would like the reflection section done, then we need to introduce that in the kit. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the kit needs to be needs to be broader than the questions. And then, we can break it into modules. Like one module can be the questions. And then like pre-interview, interview, and post-interview. And what are the various things that go under each one?
Right. Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
good. Well, and you were talking about the interpretation. I'm trying to think of the examples of, the oral histories that I know of. Like, I think of Snake Hill to Springbank, and that largely seemed to be, raw transcriptions of the raw interviews. I think there was a later volume where they went back and kind of organized like schools, like information about schools or transportation, and they might have organized, several people talking about those topics. And then I think it was Carol Herrick who was talking about having done some oral histories, and she had these conversations with people. She would transcribe them, and then she would take it back to the interviewee and run it by them to make sure she had gotten it accurately.
Right.
So that's a different model. And then I don't know, like, what Mary Lipsey has done. I sort of like to hear what her process has been.
This is Phyllis. With what Mary and I did with the West Springfield students, that the two young ladies that did the 5 interviews, was that they did Zooms with the interviewees. Then they came back and wrote it up, and then sent that transcription back to the interviewee, so that the interviewee would make changes or additions, and then Mary would review that, and that would be the final for the interview.
So for that, the Zoom is not the final product. The written transcription is the final product.
Everything was sent to the Virginia room, so there is the Zoom and there is the written transcript.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you, Phyllis.
Sure.
I think this sending it back for validation is very important, because anytime doing primary data collection, we need to make sure that the data is valid, because who knows whether we heard it right, who knows we are interpreting what they're saying is right. And so I think we definitely, in terms of data quality, need to build in that step and that time.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Yes.
It's also really neat that Zoom actually does have a sort of built-in videotaping capability, so that you don't need equipment as long as you have a laptop or a computer and the camera built into it. I'm just not sure. Phyllis, what did you actually save? Was it like a computer file then that you handed to the Virginia room?
I'm actually not sure. I know that whatever the recording was, because one of the students actually had the Zoom account, and in the end result, she sent it to Mary and then to Chris Babishak. So I'm not sure what the end part was, but I know that the video is supposed to be there for people to see.
Yeah, I don't know what the format is, but I have a Zoom account, and so I have had meetings where we've recorded it, and you set it up so it'll email you a copy of the recording afterwards. And I don't know what the format is, but it's pretty pretty straightforward like that. Yeah, and having the recording is so nice when you're doing the transcription because you can go back and really see.
Right.
But as you guys said, the validation is important because sometimes when you're speaking off the cuff, you can give the wrong date very easily or the wrong name. And
Right.
when it's written back out for you, you can go back and check like, oh, I didn't mean that, you know.
Tammy, when
as
you
I-
get the recording back, does it also give you the comments in the chat?
I don't think so.
So that gets lost. When
Right,
you're
if
at
you
the big
use-
meeting. Yeah,
And I
one-on-one.
think that's why during these meetings, we're not supposed to communicate in the chat, is because I don't think that becomes part of the record, and we want everything to be on the
Yeah.
record.
Right.
So using the chat is really not best, you know. It's best to avoid that.
I think the chat must disappear, because on a Mount Vernon Descendants Zoom that I was on last Saturday, the comment was made that you needed to copy while we were still in session. We needed to copy what was in the chat.
Right.
because at
And
the end, that wasn't
oftentimes
gonna be
I
there.
will grab my phone and take a picture of the screen
Yes.
That's a good idea.
or copy and send it to myself.
That's very tech savvy.
Right.
I would not
That
do
is
that.
very good.
Well, I participate with 2 or 3 other groups, and I have to figure out ways to get these things so I can look at them later because I'm not going to remember all of it.
Well, and it's not going to be there.
Right.
Like in the
It disappeared.
with the Virginia Africana what WebEx, not WebExes, but the Zooms that we did. In the end, it's only that video. It's not anything that was in the chat. So you miss some of the names. If somebody said, here's a good reference, here's a book, and they put that in the chat, you're not going to see that when you're looking at the video. that
Right.
you're
So
sent.
either copy it and send it to yourself or take a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times if you click on it during the meeting, you can completely lose your place.
Right.
That's right. Like this meeting, I would not dare click on anything unnecessary.
I don't know how it, sorry. I don't
Uh-huh.
know how it works in terms of the recordings, and I don't know if it's available on the free accounts, but as you know, as a ADA you know, sort of fulfillment, I know that Zoom will transcribe what you're saying as you're saying it.
Oh, really?
And I think you can save that transcription, but I just don't know, as I said, I don't know if that's because we were talking about it when we were talking about using the conference on Zoom before we had it set up with channel 16. And so we were trying to make sure we could meet all of those requirements. I'll have to go back
Could
and
you
take a look at that.
investigate that for the committee?
Yeah, a little bit further, yeah.
Cool.
Okay,
Well,
great.
I have a paid Zoom account. I can do some tests and
Okay, great.
see.
That's great. Now, will the county allow us to use Zoom?
Ah,
Is the next question.
Well,
And-
we're talking about individuals doing this, right? Just from the community?
Yes, but yes, we are.
Oh, but I guess we're going to do some of them as well. So that would be still relevant. Yeah.
Well, it's under our program.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get it into our library. So that's the question we need answered.
mhm.
Because
That's a good point. If we're going to use technology, do we try and get everybody to use a single platform? And yeah, I mean, Zoom, if it, you know, the county, you know, Zoom's free if you do it as an individual, you know, the county did have, different departments did have Zoom accounts, but I know they're trying to get rid of them if they
Right.
had them.
So I think an easy way of answering that would be to ask Chris Barbachuk if he will accept a Zoom transcript. And if he says yes, that means the county is.
Mhm.
that-
Well, he
that-
did in the case of Phyllis.
Well,
and
he's,
Mary.
he's accepted, yeah, he's accepted the 5 that,
Was that recently,
had.
Phyllis?
yes, that was this last semester at West
And
Springfield.
I don't know why we need to cause wave and ramp up this
And
pressure.
each interviewee signed the legal document before they were interviewed. That document had to be signed and sent back in before
What
the
is-
actual interview.
What is this legal document, Phyllis? Do you
It's
have
it's the permission to
The release form.
that the release form that the county lawyer.
Right.
uh,
And I thought
provided.
I sent it to all committee members. When I sent the interview for the supervisors,
Okay,
Yes, you
okay,
you
I'll-
sent out
Yeah.
the Fairfax County
a
release form.
release form.
Yeah. There were 3 versions because it was 3 different county attorneys over time that had done one. So the choice was to do the most recent one, and that's the one that you have, Esther.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Because I don't want to have to fool with it.
Speaking of which, Esther, I have two reasons. Esther.
Yeah.
Esther
Yes, Ann.
and Barnes here. I have 2 release forms. The one that I did for Dana Kaufman, and then the one that Kate Hanley had signed.
Yes, will you send those to me?
I
So I
certainly
can
will.
gather the originals. So when we do deposit at the library, we can do that.
Okay.
I'd appreciate that.
Mhm.
And who else? Cheryl, do you have one?
So yes, clearly I know I found it, and I obviously did not send it to you. I think, do you want it like physically? I think I don't know
Yes,
a mailing address
physically,
for
because
you.
that would be the original.
Right. So I'll email you and get your mailing address. I think that was my problem. And then I
Well,
forgot.
It's on our roster.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah,
I'll mail you the originals.
great. Yeah,
Okay.
I
Alright.
need the original that they signed. And that's what I was referencing when I said I did something in 2009 before the attorneys got a hold of it.
Mhm.
So I will try to get that family to review and determine whether they would allow us to use it.
Right.
Right.
So it looks like we've gone over a number of things, gathering the data and then presenting are 2 different things. And it sounds like the interviewer needs to be quite astute. They should have reviewed the questions, which, let me note that for the kid.
Mhm.
And they should be able to move between questions as the interviewee speaks. So say Johnny is interviewing Joan and Joan answers number 2, then there's no reason to ask number 2. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
sounds very,
Yes.
very elementary, but there are people that wouldn't know how to move between.
Right. To
So when
segue.
we're talking about the citizens interviewing the citizens, then these are things that we would have to go over in our training.
Hmm.
Then when we talk about the kit, we mentioned a pre-interview. Is that what I'm talking about? The preparation? Where
Yes.
we introduce what we're doing and how to do it.
How to contact the person. You know,
Okay.
do we do with just email, or do we, what's the protocol? what is the venue? Is it always Zoom, or is it a coffee shop, or is the person's house? Do we have an option? Do we have a choice? Or does that depend on, like, if it's 100-year-old veteran, we don't want him to move anywhere, right? Or he may not be savvy with the Zoom technology. So we need to be able to adapt. So all of that would be the pre-interview preparation. Getting the pre-release form, getting the release form would be pre-interview.
Mhm.
Why don't we meet once a month, right? Why don't I put my feet to the fire, and in our next meeting, send you all an outline, pre-interview, interview, post-interview, what are the key things, and then we can see if anything is missing, or if anything is overemphasized, and then we can I can start putting flesh to the bones.
Oh, that sounds great.
That sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Everybody agree?
Hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds
Well,
great,
and
Subi.
I did miss a meeting or two, and so I don't know this. Phyllis, did you and Mary have like a kit that you guys gave to the high school students, or was it really just a meeting that you guys had and really kind of fleshed out everything?
We had 3 Zoom meetings with them before they actually started, because we sent the questions to them so that they could review, and then we had a session where we talked with them about those questions and how to use those questions. We also talked with them about how comfortable they were going to be with the different interviewees, and because we both Mary and I knew the people that we were putting up for being interviewed, so we told them a little bit about those people so that they would have some background as to who they were interviewing.
Oh, that's cool.
Hopefully, if a citizen from that district is interviewing another citizen, that would go smoothly. Because they should be the ones selecting, or the supervisor selecting the persons that are being interviewed. Or do you see differently?
That sounds likely that it will be.
Yeah, I don't see any issue. So at the last meeting, I remember we were tasked to think about what target population or categories of people we were planning to interview. And so I kind of jotted down 5 categories. The first one was public servants or elected officials, under which the board of supervisors would fall. Second would be the African American population, for some very good reasons. Third would be the Native Americans, again for very good reasons. Fourth, I have combat veterans, to capture whatever we can from World War II, and then Vietnam, Korea, Desert Storm, and their perspectives of how Fairfax County participated or contributed to these events.
If we got lucky, we might have World War I.
We might. I hesitated with that. And then the last category I have, which is the closest to my heart, is the 20th century immigrants. And for that, I think we should just go to the census data and pick the top 5 highest population wise. So, and
very good.
I will put all these things down in that outline that I'll give, and then we can all debate it then.
Mhm.
And we can, tear it apart, or at least we'll have something to react to.
Well,
Okay.
and I'll
Well,
tell you,
Let me,
I was just going to add to that and say the oldest person you can think of.
yes.
Which is that's what pops into my head is who are the people that we need to interview the fastest. So just the oldest people.
Let me just throw in that there's an interview, there's a group at the University of Virginia that is putting out a call for interviewing teachers who taught between 1950 and 1980. And it's called Teachers in the Movement.
That would be
So
cool.
they're doing it in the state of Virginia. They're contacting people to get names. They're going to do the interviews, but they're contacting people to get names of teachers. So you may think about teachers that you know.
Yeah, that's a great
Taught between
suggestion.
1950 and 1980.
Okay.
What
So let's think about those categories. I think we're on to the first one with the public servant, in that we got the retired supervisors.
Yeah.
It would probably be too touchy to interview a supervisor that's sitting.
Yeah, we also talked about Tom Davis, remember? So he's
Yeah.
not a supervisor, but he is an elected official.
Right,
So he would definitely fall under this. So people like him also.
right. That would,
Yeah, and then,
Well,
once we get a little bit, I think we have to at some point get a little bit more rigorous, and we are not there yet in terms of how many people per group.
mhm.
Okay. And for every group, as Tammy said, we must find the oldest person possible
Right.
to get that sense of, the depth of capturing the history. But I think we'll get there. I think we have enough kind of information to sort of start making the sausage.
We're
Good.
creating a plan of attack for it.
I'm sorry?
We're creating the plan for the attack of it. Because
Yes,
we've talked
exactly.
about it and we've talked about it, but we haven't had the strategic plan to actually
Right.
work it.
But
and
I
get it
think
done.
we're on the right track. Sue B is
Yeah.
our catalyst.
That's
Yeah.
very good.
So she is going to do the outline for us, and we can review and decide what we'll do from there. And look at the questions and,
Yeah.
and see if it makes sense, the flow of it. And then, of course, there's probably some wording that might need to be changed. I tried to keep it as simple as possible, considering we don't know the education level of the person that's interviewing, and if we use youth. Did everybody get their hands on A Nation of Nations?
Mhm.
Either the audio or the book? Okay, it was at the library and it is on Amazon. So if you can, grab a copy or get the audio. It is interesting. I think it's going to even give us some ideas that we can use for the history conferences going forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I understand that one of the politicians is in there, his family is in there, one of the 5 families. So in that he's local, that would be an interesting interview, oral history interview. So, is there anything else? That's quite a bit to digest and get started with. Is there anything else we need to discuss at this point? Okay. I will grab my notes and try to put them together to send to those folks that aren't here. And if nothing else claims our attention, let's go forward with these points. Okay.
Sounds
So
good.
Subi, you're going to email us.
I'll email it to you before the next meeting.
Okay. So
Yeah.
do we want to keep our meeting on Tuesdays?
Works for me.
Works
Okay.
for me.
Works, yeah.
All right. So the next meeting would be on my calendar, October 19th.
Yep.
That sound right? Okay. And 7 o'clock is good?
Yeah, that works
All
well.
right. So I will send Grace a request for our meeting October 19th. Grace, are you there?
I am. That sounds great.
Okay. So I will email you. It's grace.davenport@fairfax.
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. So we're happy to have you working with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're welcome. It's pretty exciting to be taking on these new responsibilities.
Well,
Yeah.
it can get a little intense. Wait till you get to the history meeting
meeting.
itself, the commission. So we're happy to have you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Any other comments? If not, I appreciate your attendance, and right here at 8 o'clock almost, 7:53, we will adjourn.
Thank you, Esther.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good
Thank
meeting.
you. Thank you, Subi.
Okay.
Good meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Great meeting.